All I need to say now is good night. That's the career. I'd like to thank Sport Australia, my friends, the people who gave me a job along the way, the many people I worked with, and particularly my family, my wife Philia, who sends her apologies tonight, my daughter Ricky, and my son Mark. As John said, I didn't set out to become a sports commentator. I wanted to be a disc jockey, playing the Beatles and the Rolling Stones back in the 60s. I first met Philia, my wife, in 1968. She was working at a top 40 radio station in Perth, 6KY. She was the boss's secretary. Sounds like a career move, I know, but it wasn't. We were both 18 at the time, and I was playing for West Perth. And I took along V to the first game she'd ever seen of Australian rules football. That was round one of 1969. This is very self-indulgent so far, but it gets better. So going back to round one of 1969, that game wasn't memorable for anything that happened other than the debut of Graham Moss. He made his league debut that day, and it ended in a draw. But what happened was that I took V along. She decided that she would like to sit on the bank and read a book, which was encouraging. And she brought a rug. So I sat her down on the bank in the outer, and I walked around to the change rooms. I'd had an injury the previous year. The last game I played in 1968 was a hamstring injury in the second semi-final, so my first game back, and I was a little bit anxious. I went out to warm up with the team. V was out there. I could see her as I ran out in the ground. I'm warming up, and the bloody thing goes again. So the hamstring is gone. So I come off the ground. I sit with the reserves and just watch, or a reserve at that stage, only one left, and watched the game. And after the game, I went into the rooms and I heard Polly Farmer, who was our coach, talking about what had just happened. A draw, terrific pulsating finish, and I decided that was enough. I'd go around and get V, who was still waiting on the bank. So I went around there, and I was trying to disguise the limp. I was walking towards V, and she shouted out, "You played very well today." And I thought to myself, this is the woman I'm going to marry. And over the years, V critiqued my broadcasting much the same way. The only time she disappoints me is when a car goes past and a guy rolls down the window and shouts out, "Centimetre perfect." I don't know what to say. I look at V, hoping she'll give a satisfied smile or a thumbs up, and she never does. Probably back to me. I broadcast my first football match. John may have mentioned this too, I think he did, back in 1972. I was at 6KY, that rock and roll station, after a stint at 3DB in Melbourne. Interesting thing happened. You need a bit of luck, don't you, in broadcasting? You need people to appreciate you. In this case, this bloke didn't know who I was, but he rang 6KY, a fellow called Ian Major at 3KZ in Melbourne. Great broadcaster of footy. He was coming over to do a state game, WA versus Victoria. It was the deciding game in the 1972 Carnival in Perth. And somehow he thought there was an affiliation between our station and his. And he rang up and he said, "Is there anybody there who can call a footy game?" Well, we played rock and roll, but there was no one else in the room. So I said, "Well, I played a bit of footy. I wouldn't mind having a crack at it." And lo and behold, he said, "That'll be fine." He said, "I'll meet you at the ground. All you've got to do is give me a break occasionally, give me a breather, and I can talk to you." So I felt as though I was going to be a light post or a lamp post alongside him, because there wasn't going to be much from me. But we did the game, and the longer it went, the better he was towards me. And he let me broadcast, gave me some room. He was very generous. And I remember coming away from that game and thinking to myself, I wouldn't mind doing that. Of course, I had to wait a long time before I called my first game. I think it was 9 months later before I called another game of footy. I called my first Test cricket match for the ABC in 1973 alongside Alan McGilvray, Lindsay Hassett and Keith Miller. I really admired the ABC, and anybody from the ABC here tonight, they do a remarkable job. They had a method. They didn't say it was the right way, but they said it was their way, and I found that a very easy model to follow. And the ABC in Perth has an impressive record when it comes to sport. Jim Fitzmaurice, George Griliusic, Drew Morfitt, Wally Foreman, and Clinton Gribers all came through that office. I did broadcast football for the ABC, but they saw me as a Test cricket commentator. So much so they let me coach West Perth in 1982, 3 and 4. Sometimes I wish they hadn't. But I did broadcast games not involving West Perth, which was a little tricky, but Ed made that his life's work. So, and he found it tricky. Now, people ask me whether I was fired. Media people ask me whether I was fired from coaching. All these years on, what is it about media people who want to know whether you were fired? And my answer is I don't know. I coached there for 3 years and I don't know. Now, that is a great firing. I was uncertain whether I'd been fired. What West Perth wanted, I think, was a cheap coach and a cheap MC. And that's what they got. I used to do all their functions. I'd MC them. And I was still waiting to have my future decided one night. It was the counting of the best and fairest. The place was full. We had problems with the microphones. And I stepped up and gave it the old check 1, 2. And I heard this voice from the back of the room. It sounded like the vice president. And I said, can you hear me down the back? And he volunteered the information that he could, but he was prepared to swap with someone who couldn't. I think that was a clue. Anyway, shortly afterwards, I finished up at Channel 7 doing the football. I left the ABC. And as I say, fond memories of the place, but I became a Channel 7 person. I broadcasted 3 Olympics, Barcelona, Atlanta and Sydney. I did the swimming, as you saw, and my only qualification was that I had a pool in the backyard. The danger with the Olympics is that the people who know you don't know. It's all about the language of the sport, like most sports. One wrong word, a wrong term, and you expose yourself. Luckily for me, I got to commentate in a golden era of Australian swimming. Great names like Susie O'Neill, Kieran Perkins, Ian Thorpe, Grant Hackett. And as I've said many times before, I couldn't have done it without them. From my point of view, I think the future of Australian sports broadcasting is in good hands. As a nation, we do it very well. We need to because our audience knows the subject very well. When I was a young man, I sent away for reel-to-reel tapes of American broadcasters, disc jockeys. They took months to arrive. These days, I can drive down St George's Terrace in Perth and listen to any radio station in the world, download any blog, read any newspaper, watch any big sporting event. In many respects, plagiarism has become our friend, although we shouldn't plagiarise in our own market. Before I go, I'd like to say a few more thank yous. Firstly, to Kerry Stokes and Tim Warner for their strong support over many years, and to Saul Stein, who's here tonight. First and foremost, I consider myself a Channel 7 man, and I'd like to thank Eddie Maguire, nevertheless. Eddie took me on at one stage there when the rights changed hands, and I did enjoy my time there, but it was good coming home to 7. Many thanks to Basil Zempilas and Hamish McLaughlin for doing their best to keep me young. To Lee Matthews, who taught me so much about footy, unfortunately, after I'd finished coaching. Which leaves my old mate, Bruce McAvaney. Now, Bruce has never met a computer he trusts. He enters the broadcast box like Albus Dumbledore. I'm not up with these modern terms. Albus Dumbledore, he comes in with those big sort of books under his arm. And he and those books are a national treasure. I remember one day we were chatting at the footy, and he coined a phrase I'll never forget: the anxiety of the build-up and the calm of the call. That certainly holds true in broadcasting, and I think with good sports people, it holds true there too. That is your natural habitat. That is where you feel at ease. It's hard to explain, but broadcasting is all about trust. And I want to put it on the record tonight that I never trusted a broadcaster more than I did Bruce McAvaney. Thank you very much.